Hi, Jennifer here. I'm not going to spoil too much, but if you love stories where someone finally stands their ground, then you're going to like this one. Let's listen.
There is no space for her at the family reunion, my mom said about my husband's 8-year-old daughter. She's not really family, my sister added. My stepdaughter froze. I didn't shout. I took something out of my bag and handed it to them. The whole room went silent. My parents' dining room looked the way it always did on Sunday nights. Too many casserole dishes, too many voices, and just enough warmth to make you forget how sharp people could be. Even the old wall clock sounded pleased to host us. Dad was carving brisket at the counter. My sister Lauren's 3 kids were arguing over the last dinner roll. My brother Kevin was trying to keep his little girl from smearing applesauce on the dog, and my husband Michael was cutting chicken into smaller pieces for my stepdaughter Sophie because she talked so much when she was excited that she forgot to chew. Mom stood near the sideboard with a legal pad, going over final details for the big family reunion the next weekend, talking about rented cabins, matching wristbands for the kids, a private room at the aquarium, and a giant picnic at the lake afterward. On the surface, it sounded like exactly the kind of thing my family loved doing. Organized, child-heavy, loud, and designed to produce 100 photos for group texts later. Sophie sat up straighter with every new detail, following the conversation like it was a map opening in front of her. By dessert, she was glowing. Sophie waited until everyone paused for coffee, then leaned over her plate and asked the question in the hopeful, practical way kids ask things when they already assume the answer is yes. At the aquarium, do we get to touch the stingrays? Or is that only for bigger kids next Saturday? She asked. Her voice was light. Her face was open. She was already picturing herself there with the cousins, probably in one of the matching reunion shirts Lauren had bragged about ordering. The room did something tiny and ugly. Mom's hand stopped over the sugar bowl. Lauren looked at her before she looked at me. Kevin suddenly got interested in wiping his daughter's face. Michael was at the sink rinsing off a knife and missed the pause completely. I answered before anyone else could. If they still have the touch tank open there, yes, I said, smiling at Sophie. She smiled back, relieved, and went right on eating. But Mom didn't smile. Lauren didn't either. They had that tight, settled look people get when a decision has already been made somewhere without you. That was the first moment my skin went cold. A few minutes later, while Sophie was showing one of Lauren's boys how to stack crackers into little towers, Mom stepped closer to me with the coffee pot still in her hand. She didn't lower her voice enough. There is no space for her at the family reunion, she said. For a second, I truly thought I had misheard her. I looked at the table, then at the list in her hand, then back at her. No space for who? I asked, because the words made no sense in that room, in that house, in a conversation about a family event full of children. Mom gave me the look she used when she thought I was being deliberately difficult. For Sophie, she said simply. The numbers were finalized already. I stared at her. There were extra folding chairs stacked in the garage. There were 2 empty seats at the table we were standing beside. My brain kept trying to solve it like a practical problem. Then add 1 more, I said. Call and add 1 more. Mom's mouth flattened, and that was when I understood this was not a scheduling issue at all. My sister Lauren set down her glass and joined in before Mom had to say anything else. She sounded almost patient, which made it worse. Hannah, she's not really family, she said. Sophie was only a few feet away. I watched her little hands stop over the cracker tower. Lauren kept going in the same calm voice people use when explaining a seating chart to hotel staff. The cabins were booked. The activity counts were turned in. We reserved for the family kids. We just assumed Michael would do something with his side for her. Dad looked down at his plate like he suddenly found the mashed potatoes very interesting. Kevin rubbed the back of his neck and said nothing. Mom nodded once, as if Lauren had stated something obvious and reasonable. Sophie didn't look up, but she didn't move either. Her whole body went still in that way children get still when they are listening much harder than the adults want to admit. My ears were hot. My chest felt steady, not shaky, which is always how I know I am angrier than people realize. In the middle of that noisy room, the air turned hard. I put my coffee cup down before I dropped it. "She is family," I said. "She is my stepdaughter. She lives in my house. I help raise her. She is 8 years old, and she is standing right here hearing you talk about her like she's a +1 somebody forgot to RSVP for." Mom sighed like I was making the evening harder than it needed to be. "Don't make this dramatic," she said. "It's just too late." Lauren crossed her arms. "You're taking this personally when it's just facts. She's Michael's daughter. She isn't one of the cousins." Sophie finally looked up then, not at them, at me. That was the part that lit something clean and final in me. She wasn't waiting to see whether they would be kind. She was waiting to see what I would do. Michael turned from the sink and looked over, catching the edges now, not the center. "Everything okay?" he asked. Nobody answered him. Mom picked up her legal pad again like the conversation should simply move forward without Sophie in it. That was when I knew they were not correcting a misunderstanding. They were drawing a line. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask a second time. I looked at Mom, then at Lauren, then at the chair where I had set my purse when I came in carrying sweet tea and Sophie's extra sweater. My family had always made a show of trust. All 3 of us adult kids had keys to my parents' house for emergencies, for drop-ins, for helping out, for proving we belonged without knocking. I used mine more than anyone. Mom saw me reach for my bag and narrowed her eyes. "Hannah, don't start," she said. Dad finally looked up. "What are you doing?" Michael was already moving toward us, reading my face better than the room was. Sophie had gone pale, and Lauren had that stiff little smile she gets when she thinks someone else is about to embarrass themselves. My fingers closed around the key ring at the bottom of my bag. It was heavy with the house key, the side gate key, and the tiny silver heart Mom had given all of us years ago to mark us as her children. I wrapped the ring around my hand once and stood up. The room wasn't loud anymore. It was waiting. I knew exactly what belonged in my palm. I held the keys out to Mom across the table. The metal clinked once against her water glass before I set them down. "If Sophie isn't family," I said, loud enough for everyone there to hear, "then neither am I. And if I'm not family, you don't get to keep handing me family keys and family duties like nothing happened." Nobody spoke for a beat. Then Mom drew back like I had insulted her. "For heaven's sake, Hannah, this is ridiculous," she snapped. Lauren gave a short laugh. "So now you're making a scene." Dad muttered my name in that warning tone he used when we were teenagers. Michael got to my side and looked from the keys to my face to Sophie, who had both hands tucked under the table and tears sitting in her eyes that she was trying not to let fall. He didn't ask for explanation. "Get your coat, Soph," he said quietly. I picked up my purse. "We're leaving," I said. No one apologized. No one called Sophie back. We walked out with the smell of coffee and roast meat behind us. In the car, once the doors shut, Michael asked, "What just happened?" I buckled my seatbelt, looked at Sophie in the rearview mirror, and said, "I'll tell you later." That was only the beginning. I had known Sophie before I ever knew what my life would become around her. I was a pediatric nurse at a busy children's practice then, the kind of office where everything smelled faintly like hand sanitizer and sticker sheets, and I first knew her as a little girl with recurring stomach aches that never lined up with any infection or food issue. Michael brought her in after her mother died. Sophie was 4 the first time I saw him sitting beside her exam table, trying to sound cheerful while she twisted the hem of her shirt and asked if her stomach was sick or sad. He looked exhausted in the way people look when sleep is happening in pieces and grief is happening all day. Over the next year, they came in more than once for trouble sleeping, headaches, clinginess, tears over tiny things. None of it surprised me. Kids carry loss in their bodies when they don't have language for it yet. Michael never treated her feelings like inconvenience. He asked good questions. He wrote things down. He showed up early. I noticed because not every parent did. By the time I learned how much of their life had been rearranged by one absence, I was already paying attention to both of them. What changed between us changed slowly enough that I trusted it. Michael started staying a little longer after appointments when Sophie was with her grandmother or at preschool, asking about ordinary things instead of symptoms. A coffee turned into 2. 2 turned into a walk after my shift. He was careful, which mattered to me. He never acted like he needed a replacement mother dropped into his house to fix things. He was already a good father. That was exactly why I kept saying yes to seeing him again. When I finally met Sophie outside the clinic, it was at a park on a Saturday morning with juice boxes, wet sneakers, and no pressure. I never thought of her as baggage. She was part of the shape of him. When she was 5, she started handing me dandelions and asking if I knew how to braid doll hair. When she was 6, I was doing school pickup, learning how she liked her grilled cheese cut and keeping a spare toothbrush for her in my bathroom. By the time Michael and I married when she was 7, I was not a name on legal paperwork. I was the woman reading bedtime stories under the same roof where her mother's framed photo still stood on the dresser. Loving him had never once been separate from loving her. My family was built around kids, which was why the reunion mattered and why the exclusions cut so deep. Lauren had 3 children. Kevin had 1. All of them were close enough in age to Sophie that every gathering was supposed to feel like cousin chaos. Kid tables, matching pajamas, lawn games, sticky hands, noise. On the surface, everyone was pleasant after Michael and I got married. In practice, Sophie never quite landed. At Thanksgiving, Mom handed out matching goodie bags to all the cousins, then smiled tightly and said, "Oh, I guess we ran short," before digging a random pack of gum and a notepad out of a drawer for Sophie. At Lauren's oldest son's birthday party, the photographer lined up just the cousins, and Sophie ended up beside a folding chair until I physically pulled her into the frame myself, smiling so hard my jaw ached. At Christmas, every other child got a personalized ornament from my parents, and Sophie got a generic chocolate tin for the holiday with Sophie written wrong on the tag. Each moment was small enough to excuse. Together, they formed a pattern you could not unsee. What made it harder to admit was that I was still showing up for my parents in every ordinary way a daughter does when a family relies on her. All of us adult kids had keys to the house, but mine got used the most. Every Sunday afternoon, I stopped by after church traffic died down and did the practical things nobody photographs. I checked Dad's blood pressure and wrote the numbers on the notepad by the fridge because he always forgot. I filled both pill organizers for the week because Mom mixed hers up when she was tired. I looked at her swollen ankle when she swore it was nothing, changed simple dressings, told them when something actually needed a doctor, and carried laundry baskets downstairs when Dad's shoulder was acting up. Some weeks I stayed long enough to wipe down the kitchen and sweep up dog hair from under the breakfast table. On top of that, I sent them $300 every month because fixed incomes look stable on paper and thin in real life. I never kept score. I never called it sacrifice. I thought I was doing what family did. I was family every time they needed something done. Because of all that, I kept choosing the softer explanation even when the hard one was right in front of me. Michael noticed some of it before I wanted him to. After the birthday photo, he said in the car, "That was weird, right?" And I heard myself answer, "Maybe your timing was off." After Christmas, he held the misspelled tag in his hand and said nothing for a second too long, and I jumped in with, "Mom just gets rushed." I kept bringing Sophie over. I kept suggesting cousin movie nights and backyard cookouts. I kept telling myself that people who love me would eventually widen the circle if I made it easy enough. Mom knew how to control a room through logistics, invitations, schedules, and who got counted in advance. Lauren knew how to back her up without ever sounding loud. I knew all of that and still kept trying because the alternative was admitting that the child in my home was being measured and found optional by the people who called themselves my family. So when Mom said there was no space for her at dinner, it was not new. It was just the first time they said the quiet part out loud. The drive home was only 20 minutes, but it felt longer because everyone in the car was managing a different version of the same hurt. Michael kept both hands on the wheel and asked just once, "Did your mom say something to Sophie?" I looked back and saw Sophie turn toward the window, forehead near the glass, pretending to watch streetlights. "Not now," I said. "Please." Michael nodded immediately. That was one of the reasons I loved him. He knew the difference between needing an answer and needing to protect a child first. The rest of the drive was quiet except for the blinker and the sound of Sophie unzipping and rezipping her little jacket pocket. When we got home, she went inside without her usual rush to tell the dog about her evening. She just slipped off one shoe, then the other, and carried them to the mat like she was making herself smaller on purpose. Michael looked at me over her head. I shook mine once. Later, I would tell him everything. In that moment, all I could think was that the worst damage had already made it into the back seat. By bedtime, Sophie was too quiet in a way I recognized from the clinic years earlier. Usually, she narrated her own life at full volume, from homework complaints to dramatic updates about second-grade playground politics. That night, she picked at a grilled cheese, said she wasn't hungry, and took twice as long as usual to change into pajamas. I found her in her room lining up stuffed animals on the bed, then moving them apart, then lining them up again. "Need help with your teeth?" I asked. She shrugged. Her eyes looked dry, not tearful, which was somehow worse. Children don't always cry right away when they're hurt. Sometimes they go very still and start rearranging objects because objects are easier than feelings. I sat on the edge of the rug while she climbed under her blanket fully dressed except for one sock. "Did I do something bad at dinner?" she asked without looking at me. There it was. Not anger. Not confusion about the reunion itself. Guilt. She had already started looking for the mistake that could make what happened her fault. I moved closer. The hardest questions, in my experience, almost always arrive in the smallest voice. I sat beside her bed and kept my tone steady because children borrow our nervous systems before they borrow our words. "No," I said. "You did nothing wrong. Not one thing." Sophie twisted the corner of her blanket around 2 fingers. "Grandma doesn't want me there because I'm not really yours?" she asked. The sentence was careful, like she had practiced it silently before letting it out. I felt something in me lock into place. "Listen to me," I said. "You are my family. I love you. I am here, and I am not leaving. She blinked fast and looked at me then. Really looked. Even though I had another mom first? She whispered. Yes, I said. Your mom will always be your mom, and I will always respect that. But I am your family too. That is not temporary, and it is not up for a vote at anyone's dinner table. A tear finally slid down her face. Are you still going to the reunion? She asked. No, I said. If you are not welcome, then I am not welcome. None of us are going. She let out a shaky breath and leaned into me with the full weight of an 8-year-old who had been bracing all night. That was the moment the decision stopped being symbolic. When Sophie was asleep, Michael found me in the kitchen standing by the sink with both hands wrapped around a glass of water I had forgotten to drink. He didn't ease into it. Tell me exactly what they said, he said. So I did. Briefly. I told him about Mom saying there was no space for Sophie, about Lauren calling her not really family, about the cabin numbers and cousin photos and all the little things I had been swallowing for too long. Michael's face changed in stages. Confusion, disbelief, anger, then something calmer and harder. They said that where she could hear? He asked. Yes. He shut his eyes for 1 second. I should have caught it sooner. You were at the sink, I said. This is not on you. He took the glass out of my hand and set it down before it slipped. You did the right thing, he said. Every part of it. The keys, leaving, all of it. Then he added, we are not negotiating with people who make our kid feel disposable. He said our kid without emphasis, like it had always been the simplest fact in the world. I had expected him to support me. I had not expected how quickly he chose us over keeping peace. I opened my laptop at the kitchen table while the house was finally quiet. The first thing I canceled was the automatic $300 transfer to my parents. It took less than 30 seconds. The second thing I did was log into the shared event account Lauren used for family bookings and pull back the unused amount I had sent toward reunion costs. Only my portion, nothing extra at all. Then I opened a new message to Mom and Dad and typed exactly what I meant. I will not be coming by on Sundays anymore. You will need to arrange help for medications, checks, and anything medical going forward. I am no longer available. I did not add adjectives. I did not explain morals to them like they were children. Michael stood behind my chair long enough to read the screen, then kissed the top of my head and let me send it without editing a word. The room stayed still after the messages went out, but I could already feel the shift they would create. Returning the keys had been symbolic. This was practical. This was measurable. Quiet decisions make the loudest cracks. The calls started inside an hour, and none of them were from my parents. My sister Lauren called first, her voice sharp enough to cut through the speaker before I even said hello. How dare you pull money out after everything Mom already paid for? She demanded. How dare you call my stepdaughter not family? I answered. She talked over me about non-refundable deposits, disrespect, and me punishing our parents because I married a man with baggage. I ended the call. My brother Kevin called next, trying for reasonable and landing on cruel. You know they count on you, he said. You can't just walk away because your feelings got hurt. I said the same thing I had said to Lauren. This is not about my feelings. You all chose this when you said Sophie wasn't family. I will not keep serving people who reject the child I'm raising. Dad sent one text. Your mother is very upset. I put the phone face down. Then I told Michael to get shoes on Sophie, and we took her out for late pancakes at the diner off Route 9, the one with chrome stools and too much whipped cream. She laughed when Michael made a syrup mustache to match hers. By the time we drove home, I was no longer angry. I was finished. A month passed, and the silence from my parents stopped feeling like distance and started feeling strategic. The reunion came and went without us. I saw one photo only because a cousin posted it before deleting it. Matching shirts, rented pavilion, aquarium wristbands, all the children lined up except mine and her bright pink sneakers. I closed the app and went back to packing Sophie's lunch. In the background, though, things started reaching me. An aunt called to check in and accidentally let slip that Mom was complaining about paying out of pocket for help sorting medications. Lauren posted vague little martyr messages about daughters who forget where they came from and parents stuck with bills because their nurse child refused to help. Kevin told one cousin that replacing my Sunday visits with actual paid support was costing more than anybody had admitted back when my labor was free. There was no apology threaded through any of it, only resentment that my usefulness had ended completely. That was what they missed most: the money, the care, the easy access. Then my mother decided that if guilt would not bring me back, sabotage might. Her text came on a Wednesday afternoon while I was folding laundry on the couch, fresh from the dryer basket. We had not spoken in weeks. The message said, "I know we're not talking, but I still wanted you to know." Then there was an image attachment waiting underneath it. I opened it and saw Michael in profile, his hand at someone's jaw, kissing a young blonde woman in a navy dress. For one ugly second, my stomach dropped so hard it felt physical. Then training, history, and instinct all kicked in at once. I knew my husband. I knew the slope of his shoulders, the jacket, the watch, the way he stood when he leaned in to kiss me. I also knew my mother's timing was never random. I didn't call him from the couch. I carried my phone to the kitchen where Michael was helping Sophie with spelling words and waited until she ran upstairs to get a pencil and her practice sheet. Then I showed him the screen and said, as evenly as I could, "Tell me what I'm looking at." I trusted him more than I trusted the picture. Michael took the phone, frowned, and zoomed in immediately instead of going defensive. "This jacket," he said. "I wore this on our anniversary." He swiped the image larger, stared, then reached for his own phone. I watched him open his photo app, search by date, then stop. "Here," he said a minute later, turning the screen toward me. It was the same image, exactly the same angle, same hand placement, same restaurant lights behind us, same crease in his sleeve. In the original, he was kissing me. In the version my mother sent, my face and body had been replaced with a blonde woman who looked generic enough to sell the lie at a glance. My first reaction was not jealousy, it was a kind of clean nausea. This had not been gossip passed along badly or an innocent mix-up. Somebody had taken a real photo from our life, altered it, and sent it to me to make me doubt my marriage. Michael looked up slowly. "Your mom sent this?" he asked. "Yes." He sat back in the chair like the floor had shifted under it. Excluding Sophie had been cruel. This was something colder, more deliberate, and much harder to mistake. I printed both photos because I wanted them on the table between us. Michael offered to come with me, but Sophie had a school project due the next morning, and I didn't want her anywhere near what was about to happen. So I drove to my parents' house alone and knocked until Dad opened the door. Mom was at the kitchen table. I put the altered photo and the original side by side in front of her. "Did you try to break up my marriage?" I asked. She looked at them, then at me, and had the nerve to lift her chin. "I was trying to protect you," she said. Dad muttered something about men leaving and women needing to be practical. I stared at both of them. "This is fake." Mom shrugged. "Maybe that one is. Maybe next time it won't be. He isn't blood. Neither is that child." There it was again. Blood, like it explained everything. You are choosing people you met a few years ago over your real family, she said. When they leave, don't come back crying. I stood up so fast my chair scraped. Sophie is my daughter in every way that matters, I said. My marriage is real, and now I am done with all of you. For the first time, cutting them off felt clean. I should have blocked the rest of them months earlier, but I wanted record before I disappeared. Rumors were moving through the family in pieces, that I had abandoned my parents, that I had stolen money from the reunion, that Michael was unfaithful and I was too embarrassed to admit it. I sat at my kitchen table, opened the family group chat I had muted, and typed one message to the relatives who actually mattered to me. I kept it short. Mom and Lauren excluded Sophie from the family reunion and said she was not really family. After I stopped financial and medical help, Mom sent me an altered photo made to look like Michael was cheating. I have the original. Because of those actions, I am ending contact with Mom, Dad, Lauren, and Kevin. Please do not pass messages to me from them. That was it. No essay, no begging, no speech. I attached the two images side by side and hit send. My phone lit up fast after that. An aunt apologizing for not noticing sooner. A cousin saying she had always hated how Sophie was treated. Another relative asking if Sophie was okay. I answered only the people I wanted in my life. Then I muted the chat again. Once the facts were in the room, the story stopped belonging to them. A year later, the house I live in feels simple in the best way. There is still no contact with my parents, Lauren, or Kevin. That stayed permanent. What did not disappear was the rest of the family. Several aunts and cousins reached out once they knew the truth, so our world got smaller and cleaner, not emptier. The biggest change was Sophie. The watchfulness left her little by little. She stopped asking where she fit before every holiday. One Saturday morning, after she skinned her knee on her scooter, she ran into the kitchen yelling, "Mom, I need a Band-Aid!" Then froze because she had never called me that before. I froze too. Then she hugged me and said it again on purpose. We have talked about adoption since then because her first mother matters and always will. I hear through relatives that my parents pay for the help they once got for free. Their vacations are gone, and invitations thinned after people learned what they did. I do not feel triumphant. I feel peaceful. I chose the family that chose each other back. Do you think I did the right thing by telling the truth and cutting them off? Or should I have given them one more chance because they were family? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more.